Phyllis and I, Travis McKinney, could easily be described as a normal couple as far as likes and dislikes. She has her hobbies and aspirations, and mine are completely different. While I golf and write short stories, she does her craft making and is running for the at-large position on the city council. Unlike contests for state and national offices, which have budgets, running for a local seat is funded mostly by friends, family, and some shady characters looking for an advantage. She's pretty young compared to the old fogies currently taking bribes. As with any couple, we don't always agree and have different likes, dislikes, and pet peeves. As an example, I was bitten by a stray dog while playing Little League Baseball as an 11-year-old. To this day, the hair on my neck rises when I hear a dog growling. So I don't like dogs, but Phyllis does. Spiders and snakes don't bother me, but wasps do. On the other hand, Phyllis hates spiders, snakes, and anything else that skitters around on the floor. Want to hear someone acting like the end of the world is happening? Lister to Phyllis, if a mouse or a cockroach crosses her path, I'm supposed to do something. What is never clear, just get rid of it. And no teasing about it. We both love cats but don't have one. Our travel schedules for work make it too tough to care for and feed them. Maybe somewhere down the road our work-related travel will ease up. Who knows? Maybe there's a family in our future, but not until this election is over for sure. I work in accounting forensics, or following the money. My files are filled with information on some of life's cruelest perpetrators. They steal from those who can ill afford to be swindled. Phyllis does PR work for County General Hospital. She's been the face of their community outreach program. Since we aren't tied down, we've been known to take trips to warm places with beaches. We tend to stay in all-inclusive resorts that include an open bar. They make that part of it work by giving you pathetic service. If you seem to be tipping the scales in your favor, then plan on having your order slow-walked back to you. Nevertheless, I've gotten plastered more nights than not. It's a sticking point with Phyllis. My being zonked prevents her from having a good time. Whatever. I am there to escape the pressures of my job after all. To celebrate Phyllis's birthday, we enjoyed a quiet dinner at an upscale restaurant. We passed on the after-dinner treats and liquors to hurry home for some adult fun. Sensing that our week-long hiatus from intimacy might be over, Phyllis praised me. "Well, I'm glad to see you're ready to get back in the saddle." I encouraged Phyllis to take one of her ecstasy pills to enhance tonight's activities. While in Mexico, Phyllis always picks up some ecstasy for her and some blue pills for me. Both really enhance our enjoyment. Since we hadn't had intimacy since returning home from our vacation last weekend, Phyllis had that twinkle in her eye and gave me a big smile. I led Phyllis down the hall to our bedroom. Rose petals were scattered on the bed. A feather to tickle her with. She's very ticklish and has used our safe word to get me to quit with the feather. She seems to derive pleasure from being rendered helpless. That's likely to change tonight. Phyllis scanned to the bedroom. "Oh, goody. Looks like I'm going to get a treat tonight." "Well, it is your birthday, and I thought I'd do it up right. Do what you need to do in the bathroom and take that pill. I'll be right back." She literally skipped with excitement into the bathroom. I headed to the garage to get my bag of goodies. Phyllis was waiting for me on the bed wearing nothing but a smile. "Flip over," was said calmly. "Be still, my heart. Something different tonight?" She giggled as she turned over onto her stomach. I took the first plush-lined restraint and gently secured her hands to the side bedposts. Normally, I would fasten them to the center of the headboard, but tonight was different. Her arms and legs would be fully extended. "Yeah, I read something interesting. Let's see what you think." With her wrists secured, I moved to her ankles, fastening one before quickly latching the other. "Trying something new tonight?" she teased. "I've got a few surprises for you." "What's our safe word?" Just in case I'm not a fan of this little experiment. Our safe words were always light-hearted, kitten or rainbow, something playful. But as I reached for the gag and slipped it over her head, she began to squirm. "Travis, what are you doing?" I leaned in, my voice steady. "Your safe word tonight is overnight sensation." Her body tensed instantly, eyes wide. "No, no!" Let's rewind a bit to the last weekend. Phyllis and I had booked a 4-day, 3-night getaway to Aruba. We arrived mid-afternoon on Thursday, and I drank way too much, passing out shortly after dinner. The following day, I was out cold even before dinner. Boy, did I feel like hell Saturday morning. No more drinking for me, and I told Phyllis that too. I was in the doghouse. Apparently, my getting drunk was ruining her vacation. To say Phyllis was angry is an understatement. Instead of waiting for me, she grabbed her tote bag and headed down to the beach without even a goodbye. I really didn't need to do much to get ready, so a minute later I was out the door. The elevators aren't very efficient, and I caught a glimpse of Phyllis in the jam-packed elevator as the doors closed. What I really saw was some guy who she'd been flirting with the first night give her a peck on the cheek and hand her an envelope. Rather than wait for the next elevator, I walked down the flights of stairs to the main level. Phyllis was walking slowly towards the beach exit, reading a note. As she left the building, she crumpled the paper and tossed it in the trash can. As I reached the trash can, I did a little dumpster diving. It would change my life. The note read, "Phyllis, you have been an absolute overnight sensation these last 2 nights. The love was mind-blowing. Giving you so many excitement made me feel like a king. Too bad he's not going to be drinking today, or we could have spiked his drink again. I'll just have to wait to see you in Sacramento. Until we meet again, Vince's." And the jerk even left his phone number. Well, Vince, buddy, I will do what it takes to give you a mind-blowing experience, one you'll never forget. With my mind, stomach, and heart spinning, I sat on one of the benches and fumed. That deceitful woman. Once my rage cooled to something less than raving maniac, I headed to the front desk. After a large outlay of cash, the assistant manager looked over the security footage and showed me exactly what Phyllis had been up to the previous 2 nights. He warned me that if I went to the police, they wouldn't investigate. Nothing bad ever happens at their resort. The first night started with Phyllis and me sitting around a large table with about 10 people. I was downing the drinks and paying a little too much attention to one of the unaccompanied ladies. Phyllis was not pleased and began paying attention to the guy by her side, Vince, I assume. I was clearly drunk when Vince whispered something into her ear. She took my drink and handed it to him. A minute later, Phyllis was encouraging me to drink up. 15 minutes later, Phyllis and Vince were helping me into our room. Vince left 6 hours later in the early morning hours. On day 2, we were in beach chairs when Phyllis left to get us refills. She met up with Vince after getting our drinks. 15 minutes later, Phyllis and Vince were helping me into our room. Vince's friend left about 8 hours later. The rest of our trip was very contentious. I wanted to kill her, but that wasn't going to happen. I needed a plan before I did anything. Sitting around airports for our return flights, I had lots of time to dwell on an appropriate revenge. I smiled a devious smile when something crawled into my mind. Back to the present night. Now, I don't mind an ex-wife taking a lover, but she wasn't my ex-wife yet. If you're going to mess around, have the decency to get divorced first. After tonight, I think she'll be filing for divorce. Just a guess. When the ball gag snapped into place, there were no more understandable words from Phyllis. Lots of tears and unintelligible sounds. Reaching into my bag of goodies, I pulled out the Uranus silicone-based back lubricant. This stuff is supposed to be good. Okay, Phyllis, it's time for something different. After stuffing a few pillows under Phyllis to lift up her back, panic set in. Phyllis was trying to break free as I jammed the lube past her rosebud. Her thrashing about actually made it a bit more exciting. Phyllis turned her head, but her furrowed brow and tears failed to move me. Time to implement my plan. Well, Phyllis, you seem to be enjoying this, but I've got an even bigger surprise for you for your birthday. Reaching into my shopping bag, I pulled out a covered mason jar with several cicadas and as many silverfish bugs in it. Making a big deal about it, I showed the jar to Phyllis. The bugs were moving around haphazardly. I continued, "Since your soul is stuffed up your back, I'm enlisting these little guys to clean the mess off of it." Phyllis was gurgling something and thrashing about, testing the strength of her restraints. Might have even sounded something like overnight. My Nonsense 101 lesson continued. Something you need to know about these bugs, Phyllis. Once they're in a warm, dark spot, they burrow under your skin and start laying eggs. Only about 10 eggs per day, but they hatch rather quickly. Of course, I'm going to stuff about a dozen bugs up your back so you do the math. That's a bunch of babies every day until you manage to poop them out. You'll feel them moving around almost immediately. The eggs are hard to detect even by medical professionals. Absolute terror had set in. I took one of the dark pillowcases off of a pillow and pulled it over Phyllis's head. Tough for her to see now. Going back to my bag of goodies, I put the jar of insects back and grabbed a mason jar with my little torture liquid in it. Phyllis could hear the jar being opened, mostly because I did it close to her ear. "Oh, these guys are creepy," pretending to be working with the bugs. The bugs were still safely in their jar. Instead, I dipped the back beads into my jar of liquid gel. Lube gel laced with prank itching powder. Some vague warning on the itching powder container about avoiding contact with just about every part of your body. Don't have the time nor the desire to read it. "Wait! Let's sing! Happy birthday to you! Happy birthday, dear cheating wife! Happy birthday to you! Here's your first present," as I plunged the beads into Phyllis's back. Giddy up as she was, jerking around just like a bucking bronco. With every imaginary bug, I'd give an ew or a yuck. One time I was just plain mean. Oops, one trying to escape. Back in you go, buddy. Plunge after a plunge of the beads as I pretended to stuff a dozen bugs in. Each plunge had another dose of itching powder-laced gel. After I was finished, I pulled yet another mason jar from my bag. This one was empty. All done, as I removed the pillow cover from Phyllis's head and displayed the empty mason jar. She was trying her best to break free. If this wasn't mean enough, I grabbed the feather and ran it up and down her feet and underarms for a few minutes. I should be filming this. Phyllis was doing a fantastic job of squeezing her back together. A little feather action on her rosebud, and I think I just pushed her over the top. I've never seen such a hate-filled, tear-stained look in my life. Oh well, you just never know how your spouse is going to react when they find out you've been cheating. "I'm going to go grab a beer. Back in a bit," I announced. In fact, I did grab a beer, then took the jar of bugs outside and released them back into the wild. I'd gotten a little of the itching power on my hand, and I've got to say that that crap works. Even after some serious scrubbing, I was still itching my hand. Hand lotion seemed to help, if only just a bit. After about 30 minutes, I figured that Phyllis was about to go insane. The next part of my plan was likely going to get me battered and bruised. What the hell? I did another bout of using the feather. Protecting myself, I slowly released the restraining straps from Phyllis's ankles. Then, kneeling on her right hand, I released that strap, but didn't release her hand. Reaching over, I released her left hand, and then I leapt from the bed. Phyllis ripped to gag off as her other hand started poking away at her back. "You absolute jerk! I swear I'll make you pay for this!" she shouted, swinging the ball gag at me. For about a minute, I let her bite, kick, scratch, and flail on me. I deflected her attempts to damage my balls. Her itchy back needed some attention, so she paused to scratch away. With both of her hands busy trying to get imaginary bugs out of her back, I bear-hugged her and began the journey towards the front door. She was kicking my shins and gouging me with her nails. I could have easily injured her by tossing her down hard on the cement, but I wanted it to look like I was the innocent victim, so I pushed her away from me and jumped back into the house. Locking the door left Phyllis out with the moths and mosquitoes, naked as the day she was born. Ranting and raving, I might add. Quite loudly, too. All was captured on my phone, including her death threats. Time to call for help. 911, what's your emergency? My wife took some kind of pill and now she's threatening to kill me. I'm bleeding a little, but I was able to push her out of the house. She's talking crazy about bugs and babies and how I'm responsible. Please send over the paramedics because she's completely lost it. After confirming my address, I was told that officers and paramedics were responding. Looking out the window, I saw Phyllis scooting along the grass, kind of like a dog does when its butt itches. She was still screaming profanities and making no bones about how I was going to die. She was scratching her arms and legs now, too. Several of our neighbors were enjoying the show. The red and blue lights bounced off of the houses in the neighborhood, drawing out the deaf neighbors. All were getting a good look at Phyllis in all her glory. When she wouldn't stay still, as ordered by the officers, they tasered her. Once immobilized, they slapped the cuffs on. Of course, that prevented Phyllis from scratching her itch. The paramedics were told not to sedate her as they didn't know what kind of hallucinogenic Phyllis had taken. Strapped to a gurney, with her hands and feet restrained, Phyllis was telling them all about her ordeal. "My husband tied me up and stuffed bugs up my back, and they're having babies. They're crawling around. I can feel them. Get them out. I'm going to kill him." The responders just rolled their eyes, as they've probably seen nutcases worse than this. Off went Phyllis with the paramedics headed for County General Hospital. As part of giving my statement, the cops took pictures of my injuries. I told them of a night of activity and how Phyllis had taken ecstasy to enhance her excitement. Then she started talking crazy things and got violent. Told them she buys the pills in Mexico. Hook, line, and sinker. They left me to tend to my own injuries. Said they were required to arrest her for domestic violence. Withholding my consent makes no difference. Woohoo, an added bonus. Add to that, she was also being charged with resisting arrest. Toss in possession of a controlled substance and smuggling it into the county. Those last two are felonies. I had no idea. She'd been breaking the law for several years now. Wearing far more bandages than were called for, I drove down to County General to play the part of the curious and supportive husband. My hand still itched as I disposed of the goodie bag of mason jars, beads, and itching powder in the trash container by the hospital entrance. Emergency rooms being what they are, they don't bend over backward for a drug overdose nutcase. She was far down the triage tree. They'd drawn some blood trying to identify the drugs involved. She was still restrained. Whatever they'd administered in the IV had calmed her down. Well, at least until she saw me. Yeah, that earned her a bigger dose of chill out. When they wheeled her out, I was told they were going to do a CT scan to prove once and for all that she was not infested with bugs. I acted concerned. It was probably close to midnight before the attending physician gave me an update. "Mr. McKinney, as best we can tell, your wife took ecstasy. We've never really seen a reaction like this. When the enema produced no foreign objects, we did a CT scan, which showed absolutely nothing unexpected in her colon or rectum. She scratched herself pretty severely back there. Every time we release a hand, she immediately starts scratching herself again, so we still have her restrained. Even after showing her the results, she's convinced that she can still feel bugs crawling around and having babies. We'll be keeping her overnight for observation. She's presently sedated, and hopefully when the ecstasy wears off, she'll be back to normal." "Is she still threatening to kill me? As you might expect, that is more than a little bothersome for me," I asked. "Yes. We've made notes in her charts. Like I said, we've never seen a reaction to ecstasy like this. I'm sorry." I shrugged my shoulders, went back into her room, and kissed her sleeping forehead. All for show. Normally, city council candidates don't get much press coverage, but they did take a shine to this ongoing circus. Somebody must have called that anonymous tip line before going to the hospital. City council candidate charged with domestic violence and resisting arrest. Possible illegal drug overdose involved. Held overnight for psychiatric evaluation. With the evidence from the paramedics, the hospital, and my video, it was a slam dunk to get a restraining order keeping Phyllis 500 feet away from me. I held off on filing for divorce, waiting to see how things played out. The wild guess is that she'll start the proceedings. Phyllis's parents visited her the next morning, and the ranting, raving, and death threats hadn't abated. I told them about the restraining order and her arrest. They understood and said she was still handcuffed to her bed. Normally, overdose victims would be released the next day, but with Phyllis's wild story about bugs and babies and constantly wanting to scratch her itch, they kept her 2 more nights. Guess it took that long for the itching mixture to be pooped away. Phyllis appeared before a judge. Bail was set high due to the drug smuggling charges, but she was bailed out by her parents. To nobody's surprise, I was served with divorce papers the following day. Of course, the press didn't have anything better to do, so they tried to get a statement out of me. Naturally, I wore way too many bandages. Mr. Travis, can you tell us about the events leading up to your wife's arrest? Well, Phyllis enjoys a little playful restraint, and after an intimate moment, I started teasing her with a feather. Out of nowhere, she completely lost control. The moment I freed her, she lashed out, biting and hitting me. I even asked the authorities not to press charges for domestic violence, but apparently that decision wasn't up to me. No further comments. Too much information? You have to love stories with dirty laundry. Phyllis showed up with the sheriff to gather some of her belongings. My attorney was only allowing her to take her clothing as everything else was subject to an asset split agreement in the divorce. I could tell that Phyllis wanted to say and do things to me, bad things, but with the sheriff watching her every move, all she could do was give me a very evil eye. I pretended to scratch my butt, which made her almost lose it. Phyllis lost the election. The press hounded her about her love life and mental breakdown. I imagine she's got the sharks circling again. Her private life became a hot topic, making her a subject of unwanted attention. As a result, she was reassigned to a desk job at the hospital. While they couldn't fire her outright, they no longer wanted her to be the public face of their institution. With the likelihood of Phyllis planning to give me a mind-blowing experience, I took a job overseas as quickly as I could find one. No reason to tempt the revenge gods. It also shielded me from questioning when a man named Vince from Sacramento had his bank and investment accounts emptied. Over $250,000, the story said. Thanks for the phone number, Vince. Those scam artists are willing to work freelance. I did send him a greeting card, high price to pay for an overnight sensation in Aruba. After a mental evaluation found Phyllis fit to stand trial, she pled no contest to the domestic violence charge. They dropped the resisting arrest charge. She plea bargained down the drug smuggling charges, but she was now a convicted felon. Not knowing you're breaking the law must have played a part in that deal. 60 days behind bars and lots of community service. The only thing Phyllis wanted to know in our Zoom mandatory divorce final meeting was, "Someday you'll have to tell me how you did it." Really? You aren't even sorry for trashing our marriage? I'm glad to be rid of you, I asked. You're a disgrace. Tell me about the bugs, she answered. There were no bugs. All I did was tickle you. You'll have to tell me why you did it. Just get a divorce instead of trashing your wedding vows. There were bugs. Just tell me, please, she pleaded. And that's how our marriage ended. I have no plans to move back to the States. If you'd have seen the look in Phyllis's eyes, you'd agree with me completely. I think she's got a bug up her back. I'm dating again with little interest in a long-term relationship. Commitments seem to have bugs that need to be worked out. All right, I'll quit with the bug references. I do wonder when Phyllis's back itches, whether she thinks the babies are hatching. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.